So you were saying about how uh, when you're with your friends, sometimes you start talking about how you want to be on Survivor, and it's like TMI with them, too much information.
Right. Um, so I try not. It's like I know the people that like Survivor and I know that don't.
Hmm.
And I try to not talk too much about Survivor to the people that really just don't care. Um, but I love the show. I've tried a number of ways to get on, and I'll keep doing it. So long as the show's on, I'll find new ways to try and get on. One of the ways my brother and I thought we could get on the show was by going into the audience for Jeff Probst's talk show that he has going on, and we were
Great
there.
idea.
I don't know, sometime last year, and we were in the audience, and they gave the audience an opportunity to ask questions, and we both asked a question.
Do you remember which episode was who were the guests?
It was a while ago, but I remember that it was a show that um, had like a sex expert on it. So I never even saw it on TV. I'm not even sure if it made it to TV, but I remember it, and we both asked like really silly questions to the sex expert. But it was really just our ploy to get to say hello to Jeff Probst.
Did you get to meet him after the show?
We didn't. He didn't come out.
Hmm.
But we had a good time anyway. It was a really great studio. Everyone that works for that show was just so friendly, and it was just an all-around really fun day. So, it ended up being just a lot of fun to do with my brother.
Hey, if you remember, or if you can find out which episode you and your brother were on in the audience for, let me know because I watched the Jeff Probst show.
Yeah, they told us that they would email us and let us know which day that it was going to air, and they just never did. And then I just kind of let it go and was like, oh, maybe it just never aired. But I'll let you know, and if it did air, I'd love to see it.
Me too. So I was just now when you said that you might be kind of like an attorney if you were cast on Survivor. I was trying to think of some attorneys who have been on, and then I thought of Karen, Survivor Palau, and then I thought of Eliza. So do you see it?
Oh no.
No?
I love her. I love her. But that is the polar opposite of my personality. She's very, Eliza's very hyper, and uh, I come off, I think, as an extra. I can be an extrovert, but deep down, I'm an introvert. And so, I think that I would kind of be the way that Cochrane was this season. He was very interesting when it came time to do confessionals to the camera, but when he was talking with people in the group, he was mellow, and he laid low and just listened to what people said, and he'd hint at things that people should do or think about, but he was never the person that was over the top the way that Philip was.
So so if you made it, yeah, Cochran also counts as an attorney, right?
Yes. So even if he doesn't practice, I don't know if he took the bar exam, but he went to law school, so there's at least a little bit of similarities between the two of us.
So if you were cast for Survivor and you made it to the jury, you would not make facial expressions like Eliza?
uh, it's like you want to say no. You want to say that you're the person that's going to be level-headed the entire time, and that you're the one that's just going to be relaxed and pull all the strings. But that's the one thing that I learned to never assume after hiking the Appalachian Trail and filming it, is that when you're tired and hungry and lonely and with the same people all the time, you never know what expressions you're going to make or what things you're going to say.
Hmm.
You start to see parts of yourself that you didn't even know exist. And that's what makes Survivor so great. And that's what, made hiking the Appalachian Trail so fun.
Um, let's see here. Who are your favorite male survivors?
Hmm. Well, I could be cliche, and I obviously love Boston Rob. I think Boston Rob was, one of the most interesting and fun to watch, but, also played a really good game. And I do like Cochrane. You know, the first time that Cochran played, I thought that he was going to be the one that won, and then I was disappointed that he in no way did any of the things that I thought he was going to do. So then the second time when he played, I was like, no, he's not going to win this thing. He's not even going to come close. And of course, you know, this time he learned from his mistakes from last time.
So the first time in watching Survivor South Pacific, you thought Cochran was going to do well in the physical challenges?
I thought that, you know, kind of like you were talking about before, just having his background from law school and the fact that he was such a big fan and that he was going to be able to play that mind game really well. But just like a lot of other people that come out to Survivor for the first time, he had no idea how, I think, the environment would affect, you know, his ability to play the game.
Who are your favorite female survivors? You mentioned Parvati, right?
Yeah, but I do love Suri. And I'm kind of upset that Suri never won this game.
Well, if
You know,
you
I'm alone in this. A lot of my friends that like Survivor, they are not with me on this, but I still think Suri is one of the best players to play this game and one of the most entertaining.
um if you were cast on Survivor and you lost but you got really close, would you be like Suri and cry and say to your boyfriend or husband or your brother, to Brandon or whoever, I'm sorry, I came really close to winning the million. It just wasn't in the cards for me. It didn't happen.
I don't think I would. I think that first, I would go through those waves of emotion. So you'd probably see some very interesting videos on Ponderosa of me just being really pissed and just giving it to the camera and saying all these things about why everyone else was terrible and I was the best player. And I would say everything that everybody else says. And then I would eat and I would sleep and I would take a shower and I'd calm down. And I'd probably say, you know, this was one of the best experiences of my life, and you know, I'm proud of what I did. And I think that having already had such a huge traumatic but also exhilarating experience like hiking the trail really in some ways almost over prepares me to do something like Survivor, because it was 5 months of what you do on Survivor as opposed to only 30 days. So I think I'd be prepared for it, but also, you know, I don't know what it's like to have $1 million on the line. So, you know, who knows what kind of personality traits would come out knowing that that much money was available.
I'd say to future Survivor contestants, don't think of it as $1 million. Think of it as $600,000. You know, a million after taxes.
Right.
But I asked,
True.
I asked because Suri came, as you know, came really close to winning in Micronesia fans versus favorites, and then she was the fourth person out in Heroes versus Villains, and both times she cried. And she was like, I'm sorry, HB, she said to her husband. I guess I didn't come home with the million.
Yeah. And well, you know, it's funny, Dawn also was a crier this past season. And it's funny because I'm not really like that in real life. I tend to kind of, you know, have a straight face and not be overly emotional. But when I hiked the Appalachian Trail, I was like crying all the time. It was just, you know, you're just so exhausted that your emotions are out of whack and you're all over the place. And so I definitely could see myself, you know, just breaking down during that last, you know, kind of confessional that you give when you realize that you're out. But my hope would be that I wouldn't dwell on it, you know, and I would just be able to move on, because I think that's the hardest thing, especially for people like Suri that just lose it just from like one hand motion, or you know, with Malcolm with the first time that he played, and it was like you had it except for that, you know, last, you know, challenge, and you can't dwell on that, otherwise you'll be thinking about it for the rest of your life. You just got to move on.
I had written down some guesses, and Boston Rob, I had guessed that Boston Rob would have been one of your favorite male survivors.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with him. Yeah, he's just that was my instinct to say that he's the first one. He's the first one I thought of. Um, I have to say though, not that I think that he was a great player necessarily, but I did really enjoy watching Philip this season. I thought he was very annoying the first time he played, but this time I enjoyed his act for the camera.
When you hear him speaking in confessionals and on the show, um, um, does his accent make you feel at home at all?
um, it's it does in some ways. I love a good accent, so it's fun to hear where different people are coming from, and maybe that's part of the likability factor.
So what would be your strategy if you were cast for Survivor?
The first thing would be that I would spend the money prior to Survivor to getting a personal trainer and really getting myself in shape. I'm never going to be, honestly, as I think strong in challenges as maybe Parvati was, or something like the stronger women. But I definitely can hold my own and am an athlete, so I'd want to make sure that I was competing the best that I could, and kind of fall somewhere in the middle, so that as a woman, that gets you through the beginning. And, that's all I want to do is get through the beginning by not being weak. And during that time, my other strategy would be doing the one-on-one. That's something that Boston Rob was very clearly doing, but a lot of people have done. And just in my real life, I love one-on-one conversations, and I can talk about anything under the sun for hours over drinks. And so my guess is that my personality wouldn't change when I get out there. That's exactly what I would do in that scenario. I'm not someone like Philip that would be, in a group of 7 people and entertaining the crowd. That's not me. I'm the one that while everyone's sleeping on the beach, I'm kind of relaxing next to somebody and we're having a conversation, and that is where the trust is built.
So you and your brother Brandon and Emily, the documentary is called Beauty Beneath the Dirt, and I remember in the trailer how I remember I saw you crying in the trailer in one of the interviews.
Yeah. So, I think in some ways, if this, next season of Survivor really is about family, I think that it might be really hard for me to watch it, because
Huh.
one of the things that make my experience on the Appalachian Trail different from a lot of other people is that I went out there with 2 people that were closest to me in life. Like, I loved unconditionally, and by doing that, I think the highs are higher and the lows are lower. And unfortunately for us, we didn't all get along,
You
and so
mean out
the
of the
film,
3 of you?
yeah, as you see in the trailer, like, we did not get along, and the relationships that we thought were really strong weren't as strong as we thought, and some of those bonds were broken. And so a lot of people that hike the trail do it by themselves so that they don't risk the relationships in their true life. And I think that's why it may be hard for me to watch this, because I did risk 2 of the most important relationships, and it didn't necessarily come out to be a happy ending.
Um, let's see. There's this new show on NBC. It's premiering July 1st. Mondays, 10 o'clock p.m., so 9 o'clock p.m. your time. And it's what happens when a reality show goes terribly wrong. So you have a bunch of people, and they think they're signing up for a reality show, but it's a scripted drama. And I guess they run into danger and they run into trouble. What do you think about that?
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't heard of that show. I think that when you sign up to do a reality show that you don't know what it is, and it's not Survivor where you know already like what's coming, you assume the risk that it could be anything, and you just have to be ready for it. I think that reality shows are such a big part of our culture these days, and there's so many different twists and turns, and it would be interesting to see, a show like this. I know they also have a new show with Bear Grylls. That's another outdoor adventure kind of show that I think is NBC.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think
And
so.
that's coming up as well. My brother and I also applied to that one.
Um, you know, just sitting here listening to you, I think that one possible reason why they might not be casting you for Survivor is that you might be overqualified.
Yeah, I am now a little bit.
So you would take that as a compliment?
I think I would. It's funny because I wanted to be on Survivor for so long, and not really because of the money necessarily. I don't really care about that. I just really wanted the adventure and to know, what would happen to me as a person by doing something like this. Um, but in my life, in wanting that experience, I started taking on other experiences that are similar. So I worked for Outward Bound for a little bit, and I did 30-day canoeing trips with at-risk kids, which is an adventure in itself. And then I hiked this Appalachian Trail, which was like Survivor times 5. And so each of these experiences in some ways have prepared me so much to do the social and environmental game that exists, with Survivor, that I'd almost come into it like a returning player, but not having been a returning player. So, it might not be that interesting.
Do you remember the questions, any of the questions that you and Brandon asked on the Jeff Probst show when you were in the audience?
um, I do, but they would be inappropriate. I think to say right now. Let's just say they were questions about threesomes and various scenarios that may come up in a relationship between two people.
Uh-huh.
And perhaps that's why it didn't make it on live TV.
Yeah, on the Jeff Probst show, either
Right.
it wouldn't make it to air, they would edit it out,
Right.
or um, it would make it to air, but they would put up the following segment as graphic sexual content. Viewer discretion is advised.
Right. It was pretty funny too because they asked for questions beforehand, like what kind of question would you want to ask like this sex expert, and we're like, what, we should both ask them, even though we're brother and sister, which is kind of weird. They'd be asking these questions in front of a sibling. We're like, let's do it, and they picked both of our questions, and they're like, we want both of you to ask your question, and we're like, well, we're sitting next to each other, and they're like, that would be weird if people knew that you're related, so so they had us sit on opposite sides of the room to ask these questions. So it was pretty funny. It was definitely a memory that I'll never forget.
I don't think it's that weird because you watched the first season of Survivor, right?
Hmm?
Well, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Greg Buis, remember him?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And do you remember his family member, loved one video from home? With his sister?
Remind me again.
Well, he was the guy with the coconut phone,
Oh, right.
and
Oh.
the video from home that his sister sent him was pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, we're not like. You're right. That's like weird.
Yeah,
That's over the top
so
weird. That's like Angelina Jolie and brother weird. Like we're not like that. But
uh-huh.
um, but we never used to talk about anything, and now that we had that experience together, we pretty much talk about everything, and are really not embarrassed to talk about stuff with each other. So, um, yeah, I have a feeling you will see my brother and I doing a lot more adventures together, and perhaps one day when we both can get away from work, we'll just shoot our own travel show and have fun with it.
Um, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Greg Buis from the first season of Survivor and his sister are going to be on Blood versus Water. But I could be wrong. But I just want all that to say that within context, I don't think it's that weird.
Yeah. That's interesting. So I haven't looked at anything about this new season because I really try not to even, I really try not to Google anything or even look at who might be there until the show airs, because I don't want to give myself any accidental spoilers. But I am really looking forward to see who they're bringing back.
Me too. Well, sometimes, like when they interview people, they come off, I form one perception, I have one perception of them, and then, but I like to wait and see how they are on the show, on Survivor, rather than their pre-show interviews.
Well, so this is the thing that, makes me a total Survivor nerd. But both my brother and I kind of put together a little, like, fantasy Survivor, like email chain. It's nothing serious, with a couple of our friends. And we pick who we think will win after the first episode has aired. But the thing is, so we'll look at the pre-interviews and we'll look at the first episode, but a lot of times you really don't understand those people yet, but we just make an instinct decision. And then you start to watch the season and you're like, oh, well, their personality is completely different from what, that first interview suggested. But we have fun with it anyway. So when I was saying I picked Katherine for our little fantasy league that we had, I picked Katherine the first time. And then I had a really bad pick, like, in the ranking. Like, I was the last one that could pick somebody for this past season, so I had to pick a fan. And I picked Reynolds.
Hey, that turned out to be a good choice, huh?
For the fans, I thought that was a good choice. If all, like, the favorites were taken, I thought, I made a good choice.
Well, tell me if you agree about this. For a guy who I heard was recruited, he did a pretty good job.
Yeah. Yeah, so that wouldn't surprise me either if he was recruited.
But I thought he wasn't too bad,
No, I think that he didn't have a shot because of where he kind of stood with his own tribe. So the fact that he got that far is pretty impressive.
So you and Brandon went to LA, to Los Angeles, and got to sit in the audience at the Jeff Probst show.
We did. So, we love like trying new things. We love adventure. And so that was during the same year. That was last year when we were touring with our Appalachian Trail film for a little bit. And so we had done screenings in all these different towns around the country. And then we did a couple of festivals, and one of the festivals was in LA. So we both flew out there for the festival, and while we were out there, we're like, you know what? Like, let's see if we can be in the audience for Jeff Probst, like you can with a lot of other TV shows. But that was obviously the one that we wanted to be at, and we did it, and we had a really good time.
Do you remember the name of the expert on the Jeff Probst show? That you and your brother...
No, I totally forgot about the fact that we had done that, because if I had remembered this before, we started talking, I would have looked up the name and the episode and everything, and it just came to me while we were talking that, that was one of the number of ways in which we have tried to get on Survivor. One of the other ways, which you probably saw, was that we both made a Survivor application video when we finished the trail. So we were both, the end of the trail is in Maine, and it has a big sign that says Mount Katahdin.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people do like really crazy stuff up there, and we did a number of things. Aside from finishing the movie, we also made these Survivor videos, and we're like, come on. But kind of like you said earlier, I know a couple other people that have through like this trail and other trails that also really love Survivor, but they've never put anybody who has done long distance backpacking on the show. And it could possibly be because we just we already know the elements that are going to hit us, and we're already ready for them. Which isn't as interesting for TV, but I think you can still make it fun, and you never know what you're going to do once you actually get out there.
I was trying to think of or remember the name of the sex expert on the Jeff Probst show. It was, and I thought of Michelle Buteau on the couch, Guys on the Couch, but you said he was a guy, a male. It wasn't...
They had a couple different people that day, because the guest was someone that had a website called, Make Love Not Porn, I think. I really don't think this episode aired. um, but yeah, because I remember she came on, was talking about, and she had done a TED Talk, you know, about how like this website had real sex rather than porn sex, and I was like, what is this, and why does Jeff Probst have this on the show?
He never really nailed down his audience that he was going for. Just much like I've never really nailed down or figured out the audience that I want for this podcast, for this series of interviews.
Yeah, and I think that's Jeff Probst's thing too. Is we were there. They actually filmed 2 episodes while we were there that day.
What a treat!
Yeah. And it's just like, you know, it was kind of all over the place. But I love him so much that I was like, I thought everything was great. But, you know, I don't really know, you know, what direction that show is going.
You know, I can only think of one episode that I haven't seen other than the new episodes which they're showing this summer. I remember in the one episode that I didn't watch on purpose had like adult film stars. Could it have been that episode?
Yes.
Now I'm gonna have to go and watch that episode.
Yes, you have to watch it. That was the episode. No, and it's not like you know, disclaimer, we did not choose this episode.
No, I know.
Chose us.
They send you 2 tickets, they send you the tickets, and that's the episode that you had to show up
When
for.
you're there, that's what you see, and that was the episode. They had so they had this woman that had this website like Make Love Not Porn or something, and then they had sex experts that we would ask questions to, and then they had, you're right, they had a couple that were porn stars in real life, but then they came and kind of talked about what it was like to be in that career. You know, I thought it was pretty interesting, but yeah, that is the one episode you did not watch.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna have to go and watch that episode.
Right. Please let me know if my brother and I are on that episode.
Well, if I hadn't watched that episode before this interview, I might have seen you in the audience and not recognized you, you know?
Right. That's too funny.
Well, sometimes they have like when John Stamos was the guest, or Hugh Jackman was the guest, or the special Survivor episode they had of the Jeff Probst show, and they had the Final 5 from Survivor Philippines. Sometimes people sign up for those special episodes, like Topical, or when they have a certain guest. People request tickets, try to get tickets for. I remember they had an episode for moms about parenting. So
Yeah. A lot of television shows do that. You know, I think when you're first getting a show out there, you just gotta try and fill the seats. And if you got people like, you know, myself coming from out of town, you just say, you know, come on by. But, you know, I also remember sitting in the audience for, you know, one of Oprah's shows, and it's specific. Like, you know, I had talked to them about a certain issue, and then they try and fill the audience with people that have an issue that's similar to the one that's being discussed.
And that wasn't one of the episodes when she gave away a car, right?
No,
when she gave away
that
cars.
That was really great. She didn't give away anything. But I love Oprah. You know, she might be one of the few people that